Hi, I'm Svetlana. I'm a jazz vocalist, band leader, and songwriter here in New York City. I tour all over the place, in the US and a bit internationally. And today, I want to talk to you about booking a tour and running a tour as an independent artist. And if there's one thing I want you to come away with is that you can do it. No matter the stage of your career, you can do this. I want to talk to you about the why. Why do we want to tour? The what are we actually putting on tour? Where? What are the types of venues out there? And the how. Different tips of getting the gigs, keeping the gigs, and running your tour. I hope you enjoy it. So number one thing for you to think about is the why. Why do you want to tour? There are so many reasons for why you would want to go out there and play the music. For example, you may be promoting a product like your record. You may be out there to make a living. You may want to have more exposure so people get to know you, even though we do say that exposure is what ultimately kills you. But really, we are also wanting for our name to go out there and be in people's minds and heads. You want to connect with live audience. You just get that buzz when you perform in front of people. You want to enhance your fan base, your customer base, to sell more of your merch. You want people to find you more on streaming platforms. Also, your personal growth. It is really a growth experience to go on the road, to take several people with you, to drive them somewhere, or even to go down the street and perform in a coffee shop. You will learn as a person. And also you will have some fun. The reason it is important to think about those reasons is because your goal would then determine your plan. And the things that would go along with your goal you should take along, and the offers and the venues that don't meet some of those goals that you put for yourself, you shouldn't be taking those gigs. Which is why, again, it is very important that to begin with, you have to determine the why. Why do you want to tour? Why do you want to go on the road? The second thing I want you to think about when you're trying to take yourself on the road is the what. As in, what are you actually going to tour? Is it Svetlana on tour? Perhaps one day. Or is it Svetlana's great record on tour? Music from the movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Ella Fitzgerald tribute on tour. Once you decide what it is that you're going to tour, you will need some materials in order to describe yourself to your prospective client or the venue where you're trying to perform. In that way, I want to know that presenting yourself to the venues is very similar to a sales process. I know we jazz musicians like to think of ourselves as artists, but there's a business part to what we do, and the first step in touring is being able to sell whatever program that you're presenting to your prospective venues. What kind of things can you include in the list of assets or list of materials that your prospective venue, the club, the festival, may be interested in having? Well, let's start from a website. That's AMAST for the modern musician. How about a bio? A short one, couple sentences, and a longer one. Should you be hired, the presenter may be able to include in their website or brochure materials. Press quotes. What if you're a young musician, you just started out and you don't have that coveted New York Times quote? Well, ask an esteemed musician, a teacher, a venue owner. This kid is the best drummer in the whole tri-state area. That would work for now. A video, make it a good one of yourself, maybe getting together with a friend with good lighting inside a home, or maybe a clip from a live performance. High resolution photos. One sheet, which is like a resume, Where did you go before? What kind of shows or programs are you trying to present? Your social media. Do you have any followers in the very market that you're trying to play? How do you present yourself on these different platforms? And the best thing to do is to put those materials into one folder on Dropbox or Google for easy access, so the presenter can easily grab those things and then use them to market your show. Part of the what is the nitty-gritty of how to write an email to the prospective venue. When you don't hear back from the venue 9 out of 10 times, it's not personal. Those venues, they hear from hundreds and hundreds of artists. Even the coffee shop, once they tell everybody in the neighborhood that they're having music, everybody's writing to them. So just don't give up and keep writing. Number 2, we say, what is the second best answer that you're trying to get to? It's a no. Because if it's a no, you can move on at peace and try another venue. But what are some of the tips about how to write that email pitch? Here's some of the ideas that I found useful. Some of the do's. Create a strong subject line. Before they open your email, they only have a chance to see your subject line. Make it specific. Juilliard graduate playing music of Ella Fitzgerald. Tell them exactly what you're trying to do. Routing tour in March, Juno Award nominated musician. Whatever you got, put it in the subject line to pique their interest so they open the email. Personalize your email. Take time to check out the venue's website. Who is playing? Hey, I've noticed that such and such artist is playing at your venue. I think you may enjoy my music as well. Use their name if you can. Offer a specific date range. I'll be in your area, or I'm looking to play in October or November of 2023. Offer some options. I can play this kind of program or the other kind of program. If you have a local opening act, venues may be interested in that because it will help them draw more audience to your show. Be brief. Don't tell them everything about yourself. Include the video, include the picture, and you're good to go. A couple of don'ts. They kind of mirror the do's. Don't be generic. Don't write very long emails. Don't be vague. Just tell them what you're trying to do and then follow up, follow up, follow up until you get to a no, or hopefully to a yes. Pricing a show. That's the next thing you have to think about, and that's a tough one. I have toured for about 10 years now, and I will tell you there's no formula. There are venues that are located in the same region that pay very differently. Sometimes the same venue has different offers to different artists. So it's really your personal decision, your personal business decision of what kind of rate you're willing to accept. And this is how I personally think about it. There are 3 things that I consider. Taking what I can get, which is probably a rare type of show that I play at this point, but I would consider accepting some shows that offer me not such a great price, but I feel that they fulfill other goals. Something we talked about first. Why am I on the road? Am I actually playing at the esteemed venue? Am I getting other things from it? Number 2, starting from what I actually need to make this tour possible. I don't want to go out there and pay to play. So I know my costs. What do I actually need in this tour for this particular business venture to be successful? My costs of travel, accommodations, my pay to other musicians in my band. I factor it all in, and then I make my decisions, what kind of offer I can accept. And a third perspective is a little more long-term. In a given year, I have to have some performances and some tours that pay me a lot, and I can then allow myself to play some shows that don't pay a lot. So I can make a living. I can pay my costs in that given year. So as difficult as those decisions are, those three perspectives, take what I can get, starting from what I need, and how can I actually lead a life that is sustainable in this given year, these three perspectives help me. What other considerations are out there? Goes back to why we tour. What are my goals? If I'm just starting up, maybe sometimes I have not played in a particular region, I may accept something that is not a stellar compensation. If I'm out there to make a living, I will not take a show that doesn't pay below what I'm trying to make. Is it a standalone show? Am I flying out to California to play one show? Well, it better pay me well. Is it a show that fulfills other connecting type of things? Maybe I'm going from Pennsylvania to Midwest. Well, I may play a show in Cleveland, Ohio that is not so highly paid. You really have to take all those factors into consideration, but above it all, you have to value yourself. You have to be at peace with decisions you're making about pricing. So later on, when you're sitting on the sidewalk after the show, having spent all this money to play, you feel like you still fulfilled a lot of goals that you put for yourself to go out there to tour. Value yourself. Well, now it's time for the good stuff. Where do we tour? Let's talk about it. What are the types of tours that we're trying to set up for ourselves? Number one, local shows. I still play shows in New York City that are considered local. I want my local fans to come and see me. Some of those could be a neighborhood bar. Some of those could be Blue Note in New York City. Still a local jazz club, even though it's a national venue. Number two, one-off dates. Maybe someone, a fan, paid me a lot of money to go fly into California or Chicago to play for them. Those are a type of shows that we still do and we still want to have on our itinerary. Mini tours. You know, we have a joke that jazz musicians would call anything a tour. You know, I went to play in my grandma's living room, then I went to my high school and, you know, spoke in front of the kids, and I'm going to call it a tour. That's okay. You call it however you want to. But this is usually what I would call a mini tour. A 2-3 dates in a region outside your hometown. And then the next one is full tour. You're going for a month, or maybe you're going for a few weeks. You're going to a different geography. You're playing every day. And then my favorite, sometimes, are the private gigs. There are those one-off things that may or may not be fulfilling artistically, but are definitely the market that we as musicians should really consider partaking in. What are the types of gigs that we can go after? One term that is thrown around often is anchor dates. What is an anchor date? An anchor date is usually an anchor, something heavy, something well compensated, something usually in a different geography, something that would propagate the beginning of planning of a tour. Maybe a venue reached out, an art center, or a bigger jazz club in a completely different geography, and they pay me enough to actually start building out other branches, other smaller gigs around it. Those other gigs I would call routing shows. So maybe I have 2 anchor gigs, Cleveland and Chicago. All right, let's start planning and let's start filling in this road with other routing gigs. And I may be able to find another really nice and juicy gig in between, but those routing shows will help me to get from Chicago to Cleveland and play a lot of shows and still make a living. Then there are other types of shows which I love. Those are outreach or community shows. Every time I play somewhere, I ask a presenter, do you guys work with any community outreach? Be that retirement communities, maybe centers for kids, where kids get together to learn music schools. And then related to that is the fourth type, educational shows. Reach out to local public school districts. Sometimes they have the budget. You can play a morning show in a school and an evening show at a club. So knowing what we know, what are the actual venue types that are out there? There are festivals, theaters or performing arts centers. There's summer outdoor shows, shows in the park. There's jazz societies and art societies. There are municipalities that sometimes have shows. There are libraries. Museums have shows. There are cruises that sometimes are sort of cruise around Manhattan that would have a jazz band. There are obviously jazz clubs and supper clubs and restaurants. There are universities, restaurants, coffee shops, religious institutions, synagogues, churches, retirement communities, house shows, radio stations. The list goes on, and I'm sure you can add to it. The point is, when you're looking to build your tour, don't just think jazz clubs or even theaters or festivals. There's a lot of other types of venues that can help you create a longer tour that would be fulfilling and hopefully financially rewarding as well. So we talked about different types of venues out there. I don't know about you, but my head is already spinning with all these details, and how I keep track of venues is a simple chart, the simple table. I put it on Google Drive. I use Excel or Google Documents, and I start keeping track of the essential information about those venues that will help me to keep track of my reach out efforts. So what you just saw in front of you is my actual structure of my database of venues. So what is the type of information that is important to keep track of? These are my suggestions. You may think of other stuff. Venue name, Park Theater, Parktown Jazz Club, Park City Museum, Park City High School. What is the venue type? Theater, jazz club, library. Which city is it located in? Which state? What is the address? What is the name of your main contact there? What is their job? Artistic director, club owner, performing arts director. What is their email and what is your phone number? And usually I have another column there that says status. For example, I'm trying to build a tour of California. I will email folks in January and I will mark it for myself that I did so. And then maybe in February, I will follow up and I will mark it for myself that I did so. It's really simple, but you have to keep track of your efforts because that's how you don't trip up and forget. And how do you actually find the venues? Well, luckily, Google is our friend. There are jazz venues directories out there all over the place. All about jazz, jazz is, jazz times, jazz week, Chamber Music America, APAP. Anywhere you go, there are directories of venues that you can obtain either for free or by paying a little bit of money. And then when you're looking to fill up those last days on your tour, you can just go and Google jazz in Park City, New York. This is how I found some of the venues to tie up my tours and to complete my tours. So again, don't give up, search for those venues, and then keep track of them in some sort of a table. Well, so congratulations, you put together your tour. That's pretty cool. Let me give you some tips about how you run a tour as a band leader. There are just so many details, and that could be a whole semester-long class. But I'm just going to give you a few tips of how I run things. Number one thing to think about is talent management, personnel management. In other words, how do you work with your band so everybody's cool? Well, number one is sometimes you're not able to take your whole band. So you have to get to know musicians in the local market. Oftentimes, I leave New York City with just one or two of my band members because my goal is to make a living with my tours. So I'm able to hire local musicians who are as wonderful, but I don't have to pay for the air, transportation, accommodation. So that saves a lot of money. Being a band leader and showing good leadership on the bandstand and off is important. You are managing a team and getting better. I am still getting better at this kind of stuff. It's never-ending learning process, but if you are taking a band on the road, you are taking on a leadership position. So just know what things come easy to you and what things you need to work on. If you can, hire others to help. Some people take tour manager on the road with them. Others take a driver. I have hired social media managers for the duration of the tour, so I don't have to post while driving my band. I mean, not at the same time, but I don't have to spend time on promotion when I'm actually out on the road and doing a lot of stuff and also playing shows. See what stuff you can outsource, possibly. You don't have to do all of it yourself. Team dynamics. You know, you are on the road with people. It is something that you need to learn about, how the team comes together, where people need to have their own time, where you can spend time together and build the team spirit. There's not one answer to that question, but that's something that you have to consider. You have to be aware of band needs. The rest, you cannot be coming to the hotel at 4 a.m. and flying out at 6 a.m. every day of the tour. You will exhaust your band members and yourself, and it's just not humane. It's not cool. Diet, different people may have different dietary considerations. That's something to find out. The venue would ask you for the preferences. Privacy, if you can afford it, sometimes musicians would prefer that you spend money on single room accommodations versus paying folks extra $50 off the fee. Talk to your band about it. But in my experience, a lot of band members having a single room accommodations was very important, and having their own private time. You don't have to spend your entire time on the road as a band. Another bunch of issues, in addition to personnel, have to do with travel costs. There's air and ground and gas and toll and insurance and hotels and Airbnbs. But you have to remember, when you take the band on the road, you need to make sure people eat. Are you going to pay people per diem? How about the equipment situation? Will you need to rent equipment? Guitar Center is a great place to rent equipment last minute. Their rates are fantastic. How about attire? Does everybody on your band has a white shirt if one of the shows requires that you guys wear a suit and a white shirt? It's a good idea to have an emergency fund, especially when you're new to going out on the road. Things happen. It's really important to keep a budget, and it's very important to keep track of what you're spending. So in the end of the day, you know, how did I do? Did I make money from this tour? So you can plan for the future. How about tour planning? Well, I'll tell you, the best tour planning tour that I found was a map. So I can really tell the driving time between different shows, and how geography works. There were all these places I've never gone before. What are the travel days? What are the days off? Trying to stay as close to the venue as you can possibly afford it. Communicate. Band members want to know that you are taking care of them. And really try to keep track as much as possible and get organized about the tour planning and share that plan with your band members. So this is just some of the tips that helped me. Tour plan. An important tool that I found my band members appreciated is something that's called a tour plan. Whether it is a detailed email with all the times and locations, or a more formal table where everything and every detail is captured, musicians usually like to know where they need to be, what time, what are the addresses, what are the reservation numbers, and to have all this information in one place so they can plan their life around the tour and they can be the most effective team for you. They can also share this information with their loved ones, forward it to their partners, wives, husbands, parents, so their families are aware of where they are, especially if you're taking them out on a longer tour. So my tour plan looks something like this. What information do I try to capture in my tour plan? Well, the date, the city, the state. What is the schedule for the date? For example, it's a travel date. I'm picking up my band in this location. We get in my car and we start driving. This is when we're arriving, the sound check, the load in, dinner time, load out, curfew, right? I try to capture all the details in there in one place. If someone doesn't want to look at them, that's fine. I also find it helpful for myself to get organized. What are the travel details? Be that airline reservation numbers or car rental reservations. In terms of the specific locations of accommodations, what are the names? What are the reservation numbers? What is the venue number, the venue contact, just in case you're traveling in multiple groups, so folks arriving at different time can find a day off representative. Show listing. You know why it's helpful? Because your band members may have family and fans in the region and they can show them and they can draw them to the show. And then finally, I always capture the pay. Whether you are paying per week or per day, I like capturing it in the tour plan so my team, my band, is 100% clear what are they being paid, be that per diem, dinner at the venue, and of course their artist pay for the day or for the week. I hope that's helpful for you. Last thing I want to talk to you about in the myriad of items and things you will need to worry about on your tour is promoting a show. Oftentimes when you reach out to a presenter outside your home market, they will ask you, how will you draw to the show? Nobody knows you in my town. And these are some ideas that I have used. You have to be creative. You have to think outside the box. Starting with right and true things. Is there a jazz press in this town? Is there general press, cultural happenings, Park City Weekly, Park City Time Out, anything that could potentially list your shows? These are the types of things that you have to approach a couple of months before you get to that town. How about jazz radio or college radio stations? Does this location reach any of the NPR affiliates? If so, send them your CD and ask them to talk about the show. How about blogs, culture blogs, event blogs, jazz blogs? The one that always works great for me are hotel concierges. You can look up the hotels in the area and just call them up and say, hello, hotel concierge, I'm Svetlana, I'm playing this club. It's going to be a great show. Would you agree to recommend the show to your guests? I have not gotten a no to that kind of request, and it really is very helpful. Retirement homes. Sometimes the groups come out to see shows, especially if it's jazz. Folks enjoy that kind of music. And that can sell out your early set, which is really wonderful. Universities, schools, if there are students who want to come hear you play, that's another worthwhile idea to reach out to. How about special interest groups? Say you like knitting. What if there's a knitting group or gardening group? Like you're a big active gardening person in your community. Reach out to those types of people and say, hey, I love gardening or I love knitting, but I'm also a jazz musician and I'd love to see you guys at my show. I have done those kind of things and sold out clubs in locations where I have never been. And this really is helpful. Sometimes you need to find local promoters and maybe pay them a little bit to promote your show, especially if the show is very important to you. What I found to be less helpful is hiring your usual publicist in your home location to send out a press release, because their magic may not reach out to a small community in a completely different geography. Social media is helpful. You can create ads that are targeting specific people in specific geography. That is actually helpful. People will start seeing that you're coming through to their town. Using local musicians for ideas of promoting shows. That one was really helpful to me. Sometimes local musicians would want to bring their families to the show, and other times they would say, hey, actually, there's this great website that lists events. You should definitely submit your listing to there. Using an opening act, that helped me out in a couple of venues where I really wanted to sell out and work with the shows. We split the revenue in a particular way that was agreeable to them, and it really helped to fill those seats and show the promoter that I'm serious about helping their club do well. Local fans, you can give some incentives. You can say, first 10 local fans that I don't know who buy the tickets get my CD or get another type of merch. Maybe groups of fans, encouraging people to come in groups and creating promo codes. Sky's the limit. Important thing is to be creative and very active, because on the other end of the business, on this other end of the road on which you stand with your band and your instruments and your artistry, is the venue. And we're all part of the same ecosystem. If there are no musicians, the venues wouldn't do well. But if venues start closing, the musicians wouldn't have places to go. So we are in partnership to do well. It feels good to play in front of a lot of people, and the venues would love to have you back if you help them sell out those shows. So think out of the box. And when you're promoting shows on the road, it goes back to the what it is that you're actually taking on tour, or your artist assets that support this project, be that your pictures, the live presentations, the videos, and so on and so forth. Have those things ready to give to those representatives of various blogs and websites, so you can tell them more effectively about what it is that you're bringing to town. And have fun. Well, thank you so much for listening. It was very fun for me to recap some of the ideas, some of the tips that are useful to me when I book the tour for my band and when I take my band on the road. I hope you learned something useful. And most importantly, once again, the most important takeaway of it all is that you can do it if you put your mind to it and have fun doing it. I hope to see you on the road.